I thought about Christianity. Would just like to take up one point. It's a little bit of a paradox, isn't it, that we do see all these churches in Denmark, for instance, like a cultural heritage 1,000 years old,
right,
which we say, okay, so this is a bulwark against all those Muslims. But at the same time, you see Christianity as this weird force, and then should we be happy about religion going out the door, or should we be sorry about that?
It's a very difficult question, because I think quite a few of our people, white people, really are motivated by religion. If we could just tweak the religion and make it, congruent with our interests, then it'd be fine. But right now, Christianity, there are very few sects of Christianity that are really doing anything to preserve our interests. It's not a good situation right now.
Which brings me to this movement that you probably know very well, the New European Right.
Yes.
There are some persons there who've been there for a long time, like Mr. Benoit, and there's Guillaume Fay, and some of these have turned, they've actually from the beginning said they were very much against anti-Semitism, which was a dangerous thing, and you should stay away from that. So what do you have to say to these people? Are they a movement that you can use for anything if they stay that much away from a central problem? And also, do you know this philosopher, author, Rysen? Rysen, R-Y-S-E-S-E-N. He's not afraid of the Jewish problem. He talks a lot about it.
I haven't really read his stuff, but I understand that is an issue. In America, there's a group called it's called Jared Taylor's group. They've very purposely not talked about Jewish issues, and I think that's fine. If they, I want to see what they can do. Mm-hmm. And if they can accomplish, preserving white America, ending immigration, I have no problem with that. But I think other people should be talking about this. And I think there's sort of different ways of achieving success. And it's the same with in France with Le Pen, with the daughter, what's her name, Marine Le Pen, right? Mm-hmm. She has eschewed anti-Semitism, and I think that's a good strategy for being elected. I think I think somebody should be talking about it, because it is an issue, and it could be that in the long run, any movement that is successful will have to talk about it.
Probably will have. If we take for granted that people's selfish interests are the best entrance to waking them up, like an evolutionary psychologist would think, maybe. Then could the financial usurpation that we get from organized Jewry, with the banking system and how they just run down the banks and tax us all to death, and bring the money to new wars and so on, could that wake up people? Could that be something that could put passion into people, do you think, or is that too complicated a subject at all?
It's difficult, because it's one of those things where if you start talking about Jewish involvement in the financial system, it turns off an awful lot of people. It has to be done very well, and it's probably not something that is going to be fit for mass consumption in the near future. But I do think that there are a lot of very self-interested reasons why white people should be opposed to immigration. In America, and the most important of which is that in the long run they will lose political power, and if they don't see that, America's going to be a very different place. That their children may well be discriminated against and that kind of thing. And I think more and more Americans, and I think Europeans, are waking up to the fact that this is not in their interest. But you still have this elite who is trying to push these things. All of these changes have happened at the top, and they've been top-down movements. And Jews have always been part of the elite, and they are, very ensconced in the financial elites, the media elite, the academic elites, and so on. And so they've been able to influence public policy in a top-down way. If you ever had, a sort of referendum in America or in Europe where they said, would you want Denmark, you know, in 100 years to be 80% Muslim? Would you really want that? Do you think that's a good idea? You know, to be overwhelming among white Danes would not want that. And same in America, but those issues are kept in the background, and there's huge policing on any statement.
Which shows how far we are away from a real democracy.
We don't have a democracy.
No, and every time they have a plebiscite or
correct.
something, they find out that there's 80% against their policies.
Exactly. That is one of the things that, you know, that these Jewish elites have not been interested in democracy. They've been terrified of democracy. There's a long tradition of opposition to populism. They have understood that as an elite, they have very different interests than most people. But there's an awful lot of white people who, you know, make alliances with Jews in the elite, and it's in their own interest. It's very much of a self-interested strategy. We have to get those people to realize that in the long run, their own interests are best served by preserving a white America.
We see that in the Danish People's Party, which would be an equivalent to Front National or BNP.
Right.
But the thing is that they are so afraid of, you know, talking about race, talking about Jews, and of course there's also another reason for that, because some of the top people who created this party turned out to be very much involved with Jewry. Mm-hmm. So it's as a psychologist, we will have to find out, or you would have to figure out a way to get into the mindset of these non-Jewish elite people who get sort of carried along with this Jewish company.
That's I think one of our biggest problems. That if you take a view that is congruent with their interests, you're going to have a great career. You know, for example, Fox News in America is very oriented towards the neoconservative. So if you have views, very strong, pro-Israel views, if you're willing to say that on television, you can get a job, you know, in a position where if you started criticizing Israel and that kind of thing, or mention Jewish power, you're going to be out of a job. So people understand those rules are in the background. So they're big economic forces that are supporting the current elite structure. And so that's one of the difficulties in breaking through. We have to get through in the media somehow. And certainly the internet is good. It's good, but it's not apparently enough at this point. And just not long ago, one of the major cable channels interviewed Peter Brimelow about immigration and James Edwards. And these people are very opposed to immigration, and they have a strong sense of white identity and all that. Well, there's huge criticism of this media outlet for even interviewing them. They don't want this view even mentioned in the mainstream media. They want it completely left out. So that views on immigration in the mainstream media go from, well, we should let everyone in, to we should maybe get rid of the illegals. And that's as far as it goes. They don't talk about legal immigration. Legal immigration, even in the absence of any illegal immigration in America, would completely change the country in the long run. And it already has.
I thought of a way of using their mass media against them, like a jiu-jitsu move, which is what we would like.
About it.
Yeah, I think, you know, they will never, voluntarily let us get the microphone. Never, never. But if they create some sort of situation, attack us, or any, you know, bigger situation in the society, where we could be ready to use the attack and turn around and say, okay, now we have the attention. We should just be very ready at that point, not fumbling around, but sort of standing there. Okay, here you are. Hello, welcome. Right. And, you know, all the microphones will be there. That's the only way we'll get a chance to reach the microphone, I think.
It could very well be. And I'm hoping that can happen at some point. But right now, we are pretty much without any kind of significant media presence in America. And I don't know how things are in Europe. My understanding of things are quite a bit better, because you have these political parties in Europe that are explicitly anti-immigration, especially for Muslims. So that is something that is still not going on in America by any means. We don't have any representative that's been elected who espouses anti-immigration points of view or wants to remove Muslims from Europe or something like that.
No. I thought that maybe this other point that comes up of the immigration and the dumbing down of the population, which is, we have a professor coming here who tells us about, and you've had it on the Occidental Observer, Professor Knud, who is warning against a dumbing down of 21 IQ points at the most, maybe, but 21 IQ points. That's like going down to total imbecile population. Could people be, enraged by something like that?
Right. He's talking about, by 2070, I think that the average Danish IQ would be like, low 90s, which is barely enough to maintain civilization as we know it.
That's
so
why.
that's a big problem. We have to deal with that. I'm wondering, has his paper become well known in Denmark? Because he's really talking to a Danish audience in that paper.
I think it comes out in the long run, but just the facts that he's bringing there are fantastic. And you also have that happening in Germany, and that we have seen some of the results from Germany, of course. That I don't know if he's a doctor, Mr. Thilo Sarrazin, who was the top banker, who wrote a book, and that book has been sold, I don't know in how many copies, but millions.
Millions of copies.
And people are, even if the Germans are so subdued, as we know they are, they still come out to his lectures. I think hundreds. I don't know exactly how many, but he's made quite a row in Germany.
I think people are open to it, and people like Sarrazin have been. Excuse me. Again, he's written at a pretty high level. I've seen his book in the translated form. And he's making arguments that are just airtight, and I think in the long run that will have an effect. Now, as you say, the Germans are very cowed because of World War II, but I think that there are signs that white people are waking up finally.